Welcome. We are opening to the energies of Libra and the science of relations. This is part 2. Let us align with the energies of Libra, within the fire of mind, focused within the head's clear light. We stand as a group at the midway point, achieving balance on the mutable cross, maintaining equilibrium on the fixed cross. Master DK tells us the potency of an integrated group composed of disciples who have a common vision and an established group purpose is very great and can be a real service to mankind. The newer Aquarian techniques include such group endeavors. Such group action, voluntarily entered into, when not dominated by autocratic leadership control, and if undertaken with due humility and caution, is greatly to be desired at the present time. Such action should be recognized as being pioneering experimental ventures. Groups of this sort have already appeared in various parts of the world and may well contribute to the success of the work of the new group of world servers. We align with the new group. United we stand at the midway point, the way that reaches out in 2 directions. It inward leads to the high place, the place of the Most High, wherein dwells the soul. And it outward leads to the world of glamour and illusion, where they say, and the word said, I choose, the choice be made. And on the higher turn of the spiral, we choose the way that leads between the 2 great lines of force on the reversed wheel. DK says a treatise could be written on the subject of the relation of the opposites in the zodiacal circle, for they express spirit and matter and their interrelation, plus the play of qualitative energies. They bear witness at the same time to the fact that these 2 are one and are simply the expression of great mutable and yet fixed and initiated spiritual lives. It is for this reason that the constellation Libra occupies a unique place in the great wheel. For it is the energy coming from this constellation which controls what we might call the hub of the wheel. This is that point in intermediate space where the 12 zodiacal energies meet and cross. We are there. Space is an entity. We are fractals, tiny points of light, and we are in that intermediate space where the 12 zodiacal energies meet and cross. This is the moment of the reversal of the wheel in the life of every aspirant. For there comes a moment in the cycle of lives wherein a point of balance is reached and a relative equilibrium is attained. And over this event, Libra presides for us, for our groups, and for all of humanity. Let us align as a group at this point of equilibrium and sound together as souls, knowing we are but one soul. We stand in spiritual being, and as the soul we serve. We stand within the light, and in that light we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day.
As regards man upon the probationary path or upon the verge of treading it, it might be said that his characteristics and qualities in this sign are balance of the opposites in Libra, fickleness and variability, moving to a secured and settled position, imbalance to balance, bias and prejudice versus justice and judgment, dull stupidity versus enthusiastic wisdom, untrue, showy outer form life versus true, correct expression, intrigue, moving to straightforward conduct, and materialistic attitudes versus spiritual attitudes. It is the balancing between the pairs of opposites which makes the man in Libra sometimes difficult to understand. He appears to vacillate, but never for long, and often noticeably, for there is always the final balancing of the qualities with which he is equipped. The probationary path. On the ordinary wheel, the experience in Libra, a life is spent in quiet, thoughtful reflection, or in a condition of static unresponsiveness. It may be a life of balancing, of weighing this and that, and of determining which way the scale shall fall, so that in the next sign certain designed results will occur. The following Virgo life will be either one of personality, materialistic nature, lived under the influence of the material aspect of Virgo the mother, or there will be evidenced a slowly emerging soul vibration, indicating that hidden spiritual life of which the Virgin Mother is the foreordained custodian. As progress is made, recurrently or cyclically, around the ordinary wheel of life, these experiences and vibratory activities intensify in character until the time comes when the reversal of the wheel takes place. The sign Libra is one of peculiar interest, but in a most paradoxical manner, for much of its interest is based upon the fact that it lacks spectacular interest of any kind, except in the case of disciples or those nearing the path. It is a sign of balancing, of careful weighing of values, and of achieving the right equilibrium between the pairs of opposites. It might be regarded as a sign in which the first real vision of the path appears, and of the goal towards which the disciple must ultimately direct his steps. This path is the narrow razor-edged path which runs between the pairs of opposites, and which, if it is to be safely trodden, requires the development of a sense of values and the power to utilize rightly the balancing, analytical faculty of the mind. It is also the sign of intuitive perception And on the ordinary wheel of progression around the zodiac, it comes after the normally drastic experience of the man in Scorpio on the ordinary wheel. This is usually of such a nature that the instinct to self-preservation has been aroused to such an extent that in the dire need of man, not the disciple at this time, a call to the soul has gone forth and has evoked response. The probationary path. The first few blank flashes of the intuition have been sensed and vaguely recognized. In Libra, we weigh the opposites. For the keynote of this sign is Libra relates to 2 in Gemini, recalling the progression Master DK gives us from unbalanced fiery passion, human love, Libra on the path of probation. Let's focus now on the transition to the weighing of the opposites, devotion and aspiration, Libra on the path of discipleship. And this, the second decade of Libra, ruled by Saturn, the planetary influence bringing opportunity. To the authority of the rules of the road, which are imposed upon one as one passes from the path of probation onto the path of discipleship, yet it is one road. Upon this narrow, razor-edged path, one learns to walk with discipline and discretion and with desirelessness, which one experiences in unison with one's fellow disciples. And as a point of reference, and just in case future viewers have not studied this, before you are provided the 6 rules of the road for future contemplation and study. The group of disciples within the ashram who are of equal development with the new disciple act as a safeguarding group. And this is true, no matter what the degree, where higher incoming energy is concerned. When a disciple is temporarily bewildered, this safeguarding becomes a major necessity. And where glamour is present in a disciple's life, it places a real strain upon his co-disciples. They have to share the charge and shoulder unitedly the protection. It is not the task of the master, but is carried forward under his interested and wise instruction.
I included this slide from a previous session because it shows us this transmission of the life impulses from the heart center of the central spiritual sun in this graded chain of transmitting energies that brings light and life to each spark of divine life. From the heart of the spiritual sun, the central spiritual sun, through the 7-fold heart of the physical sun, to the Buddhic devas, the great lives, those lives evolved beyond our lives, into the synthesis petals, the inner petals, this inner circle of petals, or vortices of the soul body of humanity, into and through the astral permanent atom, to the heart center within the head for humanity, and then to the heart center of each atom. That is the downward transmission. Now let us focus on the upward, uplifted approach we use in our meditations, and see the highest point above your head, the light bathing the etheric spine, and see that scintillating light up and down the etheric spine. And now let us move to aligning our centers for the flow of love and intelligence within the soul vehicle. Each, and as a group, expanding to the highest point, which is also that innermost point, that point of incomprehensible knowing and being. The soul itself. And from that point, link imaginatively along a line of lighted energy into the heart center of the serving group. And from our small group gathered together today, visualize this continuing expansion of light and love to all esoteric groups and those joining us from the other side of the veil, and subjectively now and in the future. As each sphere of greater being opens to your awareness, visualizing the one soul, uniting the souls of all our group members and those working with us subjectively and joining us from the other side of the veil. In unison, we sound the protective formula while making the sign of the cross of divinity, touching the forehead. As the soul, we work in light, and moving down to the middle of the chest, and darkness cannot touch us. We take our stand within the light. Moving to the left eye, we work into the right eye, and from that point, we never move. Pause briefly, affirming the purity of our motive, inspired by a loving heart. We offer ourselves for this work, this service, for humanity, as we aspire to greater understanding of Master DK's teachings. We affirm our intention to expand our conscious service under the law of love for the good, the true, the beautiful, to inspire goodwill in all, under the guidance of the soul and the protection of the higher lives, focused in the heart center of our group. Radiance we are and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth, the inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus, with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. So we move forward together to better understand the challenges that arise in group formation as we contemplate the energies in Libra impressing the paths. Tia.
We move forward together to better understand the challenges that arise in group formation as we contemplate the energies in Libra impressing the paths. Certain paramount realizations must precede the work of removing hindrances, Raja Yoga, light of the soul, and they must be enumerated as follows. A realization that in obedience to the next duty and adherence to the highest known form of truth lies the path of further revelation. Is this a realization on the path of probation? A realization that dissipation is the greatest thing to cultivate, and that a willingness to undergo joyously any amount of temporary inconvenience, pain, or agony must be developed, having in view the future glory which will blot out the clouds of the passing hour. Is this a realization on the path of discipleship? A realization that synthesis is the method whereby comprehension is attained, and that by blending the pairs of opposites, the middle path is gained that leads straight to the heart of the citadel. Is this a realization on the path of initiation and beyond? As we enter into the final decade of Libra in a few days, consider these realizations.
One of the problems which confronts the aspirant is the problem of duty, recognizing glamour when it arises, and of being aware of the glamours which beset his path and the illusions which build a wall between him and the light. It is much that you have recognized that glamour and illusion exist. Number one, illusion is primarily of a mental quality and has a characteristic of the attitude of mind of those people who are more intellectual than emotional. They have outgrown glamour as usually understood. It is the misunderstanding of ideas and thought forms of which they are guilty and of misinterpretations. Number two, glamour is astral in character and is far more potent at this time than illusion, owing to the enormous majority of people who function astrally always. Number three, Maya. Maya is vital in character and is a quality of force. It is essentially the energy of the human being as it swings into activity through the subjective influence of the mental illusion or astral glamour, or of both in combination. Number four, the dweller on the threshold, always present, swings, however, into activity only on the path of discipleship, when the aspirant becomes occultly aware of himself, of the conditions induced within him as a result of his interior illusion, his astral glamour, and the Maya surrounding his entire life. Being now an integrated personality, and no one is a disciple, my brother, unless he is mental as well as emotional, which is a point the devotee oft forgets. These three conditions with the term the dweller on the threshold is applied. These three conditions with the preponderance of the effect in one or other of the bodies are seen as a whole, and to this whole term, the dweller on the threshold is applied. It is in reality a vitalized thought form, embodying mental force, astral force, and vital energy.
We as humanity now are beginning to see and know this dweller on the threshold, this combination of mental force, astral force, and vital energy, which is causing chaos and all the issues that we see that are global in nature.
The Akashic record is like an immense photographic film, registering all the desires and earth experiences of our planet. Those who perceive it will see pictured thereon: 1. The life experiences of every human being since time began. 2. The reactions to experience of the entire animal kingdom. 3. The aggregation of the thought form of a karmic nature based on desire of every human unit throughout time. Herein lies the great deception of the records. Only a trained occultist can distinguish between actual experience and those astral pictures created by imagination and keen desire. Number 4, the planetary dweller on the threshold, with all that appertains to that term and all the aggregations of forms which are to be found in its environment.
We stop here for just a minute because I want to comment that one of the reasons why we try not to use form images or glorified images of the human form, human imagination, is because these link so directly to this aggregation of thought forms of a kama manasic nature based on desire from the previous eras and civilizations and from Atlantean times that are really based in Atlantean times, as DK tells us. So I just wanted you to know that's why in our presentations we're trying to minimize, and also, as we did in part 1, encourage you to study symbols that relate to the higher planes, sacred geometry, and utilize your own imagination to recreate those connections for yourself.
A death blow must be struck at the world illusion, for it holds the sons of men in thrall. By learning to break through the glamour in their own lives and to live in the light of the intuition, disciples can strengthen the hands of those whose task it is to awaken the intuition in man. There are many and different kinds of glamour, and disciples are frequently surprised when they learn what is regarded as glamour by the masters. I will enumerate a few of the more general glamours for you, leaving you to make any needed application and expansion of the idea from the individual to humanity as a whole. There are many other glamours, both individual and worldwide, but these will serve to indicate a general tendency. Those who are in preparation for initiation must learn to work consciously with glamour. They must work effectively with the presented truth, ignoring any pain or suffering or mental questioning, which is incident to personality, rebellion, and limitation. They must cultivate that divine indifference to personal considerations, which is the outstanding hallmark of the trained initiate. You will have to exercise the deepest watchfulness in the endeavor to work thus on the astral plane, holding simultaneously the attitude of the observer on the high plane of the soul. No constructive work and no service of vital importance can be rendered in this difficult sphere of activity unless there is this detached and liberated attitude. You are to work in one of the most difficult spheres of activity, perhaps the most difficult to which a disciple can be called, and hence the advisability of working there in group formation. I cannot emphasize too strongly that you are to work as a group and not as individuals.
First must come, however, aptitude in dispelling glamour and illusion in the personal life of each one of you. I will therefore ask you to intensify your effort each month at the full moon period and seek to strengthen your tie with myself, Master DK, and with your fellow group members. One word of warning only will I give. Success along this line will bring both its rewards and also its difficulties. You will have to watch with care for the undue stimulation of your astral or emotional nature, with consequent and subsequent glamour. You will have to exercise the deepest watchfulness in the endeavor to work thus on the astral plane, holding simultaneously the attitude of the observer on the high plane of the soul. No constructive work and no service of vital importance can be rendered in this difficult sphere of activity unless there is detached and liberated attitude. Master DK gives us 9 glamours in the following list. Later, as you review his instructions brought together in this, our contemplative sequence through his teachings, rather than trying to identify your personal individual glamours, pause and think of a group. There we are in all kinds of groups, a family group, a community group. We are in spheres of activity, in service, in group formation. Think of one of those spheres of activity, and from what DK calls the altitude of the observer, note any group expression of the glamour that is listed. So we'll pause briefly so that you can achieve that altitude as well as the attitude of the observer as we go through the list. And Veronica, would you be able to read for us? You should now be able to unmute. The glamour of destiny. This is a glamour which indicates to the one whom it controls that he has important work to do and that he must speak and work as destined. This feeds a pride which has no foundation in fact. The glamour of aspiration. Those thus conditioned are completely satisfied and preoccupied with their aspiration towards the light and rest back upon the fact that they are aspirants. Such people need to move onward, onto the path of discipleship, and cease their preoccupation and satisfaction with their spiritual ambitions and goals. The glamour of self-assurance, or of what might be called the astral principles of the disciple. This is the belief in plain language that the disciple regards that his point of view is entirely right. This again feeds pride and tends to make the disciple believe himself to be an authority and infallible. It is the background of the theologian. The glamour of duty. This leads to an overemphasis of the sense of responsibility, producing lost motion and the emphasis of the non-essential. The glamour of environing conditions, leading frequently to a sense of frustration or of futility or of importance. The glamour of the mind and its efficiency and its capacity to deal with any or every problem. This leads inevitably to isolation and loneliness. The glamour of devotion, leading to an undue stimulation of the astral body. The man or woman thus glamored sees only one idea, one person, one authority, and one aspect of truth. It feeds fanaticism and spiritual pride. The glamour of desire with its reflex action upon the physical body. This leads to a constant condition of fighting and of turmoil. It negates all peace and fruitful work and must someday be brought to an end. The glamour of personal ambition. Now, as you reflect and contemplate, spend some time endeavoring to work with the preparatory stages in relation to those glamours you've identified as part of your expression. These preparatory stages are given in Glamour, a World Problem, for all endeavoring to dissipate glamour and illusion, individual, group, or when one has worked on dissipating glamour for some time and is definitely on the path of discipleship. We can work then on world glamour, but our focus needs to be on individual glamour first, and then venture into group glamour. Recognizing the glamour to be dissipated, and this involves a willingness to cooperate with the soul and achieving soul contact. An understanding of the nature of a particular glamour, what you've contributed to it in your own life, what you have contributed as part of a group, and then focusing of the light in 3 stages. There's a focusing of the dual light of matter and mind in the mental body. There is focusing through meditation, this dual light of matter and mind, and the light of the soul. For those of us who do the healing meditation, we've had practice in this. There's focusing then of these 3 lights, and so creating the searchlight of the soul for the dissipation of glamour. This is where doing it in group formation to eliminate individual glamours is particularly important. Then there's preparatives through alignment and integration. And this alignment and integration produces a field of magnetic thought substance. And finally, the turning of the attention and of the searchlight of the mind onto the astral plane. Then working in group formation to dispel the illusions and dissipate the glamours that are identified on that individual level, and then potentially working in a group. So this practice is very important, and we will be looking to formulate an opportunity for those who'd like to work on their individual glamour on an individual basis weekly, and possibly developing after a few months into working on group glamour or illusion in the new year in 2024. So there'll be more on that if you're interested in working on your individual glamours in group formation. If you can overcome glamour in your own lives, and if you can therefore comprehend the nature of illusion, you will help in the destruction of the dweller on the threshold, the devitalizing of the general Maya, the dissipation of glamour, the dispelling of illusion. This you have to do in your own lives, DK says, and in the group relation, through discipline, dispassion, decentralization, and detachment. Then your more general contribution will help in the wider human issues. The acuteness of the intellect and the illumination of the mind, plus love and intention, will accomplish much. To this service, he reiterates his call to us. Ellen, would you read for these next few slides, please?
I cannot too strongly reiterate the constant necessity for you to think in terms of energies and forces, of lines of force and energy relationships. As Master DK has told us, the science of the centers, the science of the rays, and the science of triangles, integrated with esoteric understanding which is still in its infancy, form the science of relations, the new astrology. As we move forward in Libra, let us briefly consider those relations that must be understood preliminary to becoming a first-degree initiate. The first passage for many under the zodiacal sign of Libra. But first, let's consider MDK's clarification, Master DK's clarification. The question of the centers has always had a great deal of interest for men, and much harm has been done through the directing of attention upon the physical centers. Unfortunately, names have been given to the centers which have their counterparts in the physical form, and with the usual aptitude of man to identify himself with that which is tangible and physical. A mass of data has accumulated which is based not on spiritual knowledge, but on a study of the effects produced through meditation on the physical centers. This naming based on physical forms complicates the process of defining the correspondences from individual to group to nation to planetary and systemic centers.
Thank you, Ellen. I included this again, and I will include it in future times because we're usually almost unconscious of how we're impacted by these naming protocols that are used in DK's writings. And one that I would say we need to be very cautious with are the naming of the glands, because we use the naming of the glands that correspond to the physical glands. And this altitude and attitude of the observer has to be maintained in terms of your own ability when you say the name to conceive of the etheric integration of those lines of force that are not any part of the physical manifestation. So those glands, it's those lines of force coming together into that center and the point of focus within that. It's very difficult then to name it as a nation, what that might be, to name it as our planet, what that might be. DK uses the terms consistently across his writings, but it's something that we need to be very conscious and aware of, that we are always thinking in that other term that the high beings might use. Martine.
Expanding and applying the concept of as above, so below, in this new astrology, the science of relations. Let us briefly review the series of relations that humanity must accomplish as given by Master DK in a treatise on white magic in the section on the overcoming of hindrances. Relation established between a positive and a negative vibration, and the study of these relations carries much information to the student and is part of the teaching given in preparation for the first initiation. A list of these related situations might here be given, showing them in their progressive relation on the path of evolution. First, the relation between male and female physical bodies, called by men the sex relation, and deemed of such paramount importance at this time. In the veil of illusion, the symbol oft engrosses attention, and that which it represents is forgotten. In the solving of this relationship will come racial initiation, and it is with this that the race is now engrossed. Two, the relation between the astral body and the physical, which for the majority is the control by the positive astral natures of the negative automatic physical. The physical body, the instrument of desire, is swayed and controlled by desire. Desire for physical life and desire for the acquisition of the tangible. Three, the relation between the mind and the brain, which constitute the problem of the more advanced men and races, and of which the vast system of schools, colleges, and universities indicate the importance. Much progress in this relation has been made during the past 50 years, and the work of the psychologist marks its highest point. When this is understood, the mind will be regarded as the positive factor, and the other two aspects of the form nature will respond receptively. They will be the automatons of the mind. Four, the relation between the soul and the personality, which is the problem engrossing the attention of aspirants now, for they are the pioneers of the human family, the pathfinders into the world of the soul. With these relations, the mystic and the occultist concern themselves. The relation of the soul to the personality is developed primarily from the standpoint of meditation. It should be borne in mind that these rules of white magic are only for those whose personality is coordinated and whose minds are gradually being brought under control. The man, therefore, is utilizing the lower mind, the reasoning mind, while the soul is utilizing the higher or abstract mind. Both units are working with these two aspects of the universal principle of mind, and on this ground, their relation becomes possible. The man's work with his mind is to render it negative and receptive to the soul, and this is his positive occupation. Note the use here of the word positive in the attempt to make the mind receptive, for herein lies the clue to right action. The soul's work in meditation is to make the point of that meditation so positive that the lower mind can be impressed, and so the lower man can be brought into line with the eternal plan. It is the harmlessness that springs from true understanding and control of the personality by the soul that leads inevitably to spiritual expression in everyday life. It emanates from a capacity to enter into the consciousness and to penetrate into the realization of one's brother. And when this has been accomplished, all is lost sight of in the desire to aid and to help. The healing energy of the spiritual hierarchy cannot flow through the group if there is disharmony and criticism. The first way, therefore, of any group of healers is to establish themselves in love and to work towards group unity and understanding. The need for patience as the healing group integrates and the auras of the group members blend. It takes a little time for people to learn to work together in perfect understanding and impersonality, and at the same time to achieve, during their work, a one-pointedness which will produce the needed group rhythm, a rhythm of such unity and intensity that the work can synchronize internally. Aspirants and students, as they work along these lines, must train themselves to think as a group and to give to the group, without a niggly or reticent spirit, the best that is in them, and also the fruit of their meditation upon these matters. A close study of one's emotional reactions brings one to the consideration of that basic characteristic, which cannot be overemphasized in view of the world's present condition: harmlessness. I tell you that the achieving of harmlessness, in the positive sense, not in the negative, means the attainment of that step which leads definitely to the portal of initiation. When first mentioned, it sounds of small moment, and to bring the whole subject of initiation into such small account that it becomes unimportant. Essential that we continue to achieve not only the attitude, but as Master Dike says, the altitude of the observer in this array sign LIBRA. Five, the relation between the centers below the diaphragm and those above or between, the center at the base of the spine and the 1,000-petaled lotus, the head center. In this, the 4 petals of the basic center become the many, or the quaternary is lost in the universal. The sacral center and the throat. In this, there comes a union between the 12 creative hierarchies and the quaternary, and the secret of the 16 petals of the throat lotus is seen. The solar plexus center and the heart, in which the 10 of the perfect man in the solar system is lost in the consummate tract. As the 12 creative hierarchies in their outer and creative aspect are contacted by the man with the perfected quaternary from the standpoint of the form, so in the relation between the solar plexus and heart is the second aspect perfected. The love of the soul can express itself perfectly through the emotional nature. I have several times used the phrase pass through the centers and forms. This concept necessitates the idea of distributing centers to which the incoming energies may go and from which they may pass out again as radiation. Some idea of this might be grasped if I gave you the new proposition, new to you, though old to esotericists, of the centers in the human etheric body. The 4 centers above the diaphragm, the heart, throat, ajna, and head centers are basically and primarily receiving centers. The centers below the diaphragm, the base of the spine, the sacral, solar plexus, and spleen centers are galvanized into activity by the four higher receiving centers. This, when accomplished, demonstrates as personality and physical magnetism and influence until the time comes when the soul and the personality are a functioning unit.
Let's pause here for just a minute before we proceed, because these last relations really give us a sense of how much has to be integrated in the formation of any group. And we began our esoteric healing group in 2012 and launched it in 2014. And since then, other groups and focuses along that path of learning have evolved and are involved in our meditation. And then the Healing Garden meditation and these other meditations that we align with regularly, underpinning the meditative work that we do are the principles, the substantive approach to reinforce these relations. That, as Master DK tells us, in any group, we have many different points in evolution, many points along the path. So what we're endeavoring to do in this section is to acknowledge that in our groups, there are those who are just beginning and they're still on the path of probation. There are those who are moving on to the path of discipleship. And subjectively, and from the other side of the veil, we invoke the support of those who have advanced beyond. So hold that idea in mind in terms of what DK tells us, that for individuals, for groups, for nations, all of this evolution of these connections and opening of the centers is based on development and rayology. And depending on the ray and the integrating process of the rays, those centers are aligned in triangles at different points along the path. So always move to that higher point of seeing the whole of the group, and allowing for those energies to begin over time to merge and blend together. And avoid that glamour of devotion that results in frustration and thinking that progress is not being made, because the fact that we're meditating together is the fact, and we are using occult meditation underlying all of that. And gratitude for your service in stabilizing and standing with that substantive approach that Master DK has given us. So thank you, Martine. Let's go forth.
Six, the relation between the two head centers, or between the center between the eyebrows and the center above the head. This relation is set up and stabilized when soul and body are a functioning unit. In our esoteric healing meditation, we are, as a group, acting as if, practicing in our alignment, this stable relation to become a functioning unit. Seven, the relation between the pineal gland and the pituitary body as a result of the above, the two head centers, or between the center between the eyebrows and the center above the head. In our esoteric healing meditations, we are, as a group, acting as if, practicing in our alignment, a stable relation to become a functional unit. Eight, the relation between the higher and the lower mind, involving steady and increasing soul contact. The meditative attitude of the soul is duplicated in the three bodies, or by the spiritual man, and the steady meditation of the soul goes on also on its own plane. It is with this and with its effect that we are primarily concerned in Rule 2 for the mental body. When the shadow has responded, in meditation deep, the work proceeds. The lower light is thrown upwards. The greater line illuminates the three. This is the goal on the path of discipleship. A later relation, which in no way concerns us, is set up after the third initiation between the soul and the monad. And throughout the course of cosmic evolution, these relationships will emerge. The race as a whole is, however, only concerned with the setting up of a relation between soul and body, and beyond this, there is no need to go.
Thank you, Marty. 9 relations from the first to the third initiation. This path of return, the path of ingoing, where we become goats. Virgo, the 9 signs. Libra, the point of equilibrium, reversal of the wheel, leading us to Scorpio, the Hydra, the 9 tests. The progression and relationships in these 3 signs at the point of reorientation. And DK has given us the 9 glamours to be dispelled. Life within the form, the reversing of the wheel. Heike, would you read for us now?
Life within the form, the reversing of the wheel. When there is a reversal in the way of passing as a soul around the zodiac, this is symbolized as the revolution of the sun around the zodiac from Aries to Pisces, instead of the reverse movement from Aries to Taurus. This is repeated in the human frame, and the 4 lower centers eventually return that which has come to them. They thus reverse the process normally followed, and the centers above the diaphragm become radioactive, dynamic, and magnetic. This is an intricate occult study and is concerned with the response of the etheric body to the incoming energies. It relates finally the lowest center at the base of the spine to the highest center, the head center. This is a correspondence to the relation of the earth to the sun. Think this out.
And I'll pause here to comment that this again reminds us that when we're working with the souls of nations, if you're working with the soul of the heads of state around the world, you're working with centers that are not truly in physical form, but are in form on the mental plane. And astral field is where their expression occurs. So there's quite a bit of study to be done, and that's currently being led by a Soul of Nations project that is being done through the 2025 initiative for those who are interested in making this transition to look at what those positive centers are transformed to in the soul of a group, a community, a larger group. And it is really incumbent upon us to reconceive these as being on the mental plane and on the expressing on the astral field. Now let's move on.
For those moving beyond the third initiation, the first major initiation, they themselves are preparing to tread the way of the higher evolution. What that way is, I cannot tell you, for you would be unable to grasp its meaning. It is related to the spiritual condition and purpose of the monad, whose goal is not expansion of consciousness, but of that which such expansions of consciousness will reveal, a very different matter, and one which is as yet entirely meaningless to anyone who has not taken the third initiation. Forget not, the Christ and his great brothers and all of an even higher initiate rank than they possess have a definite goal, but it is one which will only define itself clearly in the third solar system, the system in which the will of God is the dominant idea, as the love of God conditions this system in which we now function. But this is not consciousness or awareness. It is a stage of being which is connected with the law of sacrifice, the law which governs those states of being which grow out of the establishment of right human relations. Purpose can only be revealed and understood when such right relations are the firmly fixed habits of all points of divine expression. You can see, therefore, why it is not possible for those in process of grasping the need of right human relations to understand more than that a great possibility lies ahead. Of the nature of this possibility, only the higher ranks of initiates are aware, and towards it they strive. We can utilize the symbols Master DK gives us to better understand the path of discipleship. You will see that I have combined the two crosses of the vertical and horizontal life with the cross of humanity, and have also added a circle at the summit of all three. What, my brother, does this mean? It signifies the following. 1. That the vertical life of spiritual contact with the ashram is constantly preserved by meditation, prayer, and concentration. 2. That the horizontal life of service is preserved with equal care, and that there is a constant stream of planned energy going out to all those who need help. 3. The long limb of the triple cross symbolizes to the disciple that he must go down into the very depth of human life in order to prepare the masses for the reappearance of the Christ and for the externalization of the hierarchy. And 4, the sphere at the summit of the cross portrays the place of the disciple's consciousness. His life of reflection, of constant awareness, and the steady focus of his attention is higher than the vertical life of the aspirant, than his horizontal life of service, and indicates the measure of his conscious activity in the ashram. Forget not that an ashram in the hierarchy is on a higher plane than that of the soul. He is therefore alive and active on 3 levels of activity simultaneously, and it and is in the process of demonstrating, as far as in him lies and his degree of discipleship permits, the three divine aspects. The will aspect, governing his work within the hierarchy in relation to the coming great movement. The love aspect, governing his vertical life and producing spiritual steadfastness in form. The intelligence aspect, governing his horizontal life and making him a wise server of his fellow men. Finally, the long line from the point of radiant spiritual focus symbolizes the path from the highest point attained by the disciple to the lowest point of service. You will notice also in this symbol that the secondary point of focus appears where all the lines meet and cross each other. This point represents the disciple's personality into which the higher radiance must pour, and from which spiritual energy reaches out on all sides. As progress is made recurrently or cyclically around the wheel of life, these experiences and vibratory activities intensify in character until the time comes when the reversal of the wheel takes place. Then Libra leads on to Scorpio, and the active soul life, active through the medium of the personality nature and not simply on its own plane, is registered, recorded, and noted in Virgo, and balanced and assessed in Libra, eventually bringing about the tests and trials between the soul and the personality, which latter fights with power and determination to preserve the status quo of the balanced expression of these two, where the preponderance of the personality influence is not possible. The crisis of the burning ground, which is brought about through the activity of Uranus. This is entered through the free choice of the initiate who makes his choice in Libra, the point of balance, where usually the moment for the reversal of the wheel takes place. There the man has to decide whether to proceed as usual and according to custom, or, reversing the wheel, to pass through the burning ground to liberation. Libra is the polar opposite to Aries and therefore closely related. Libra marks an interlude or a notable point of balance before the strenuous testing and trial of Scorpio. Reorientation, or the great cycle of repolarization, which takes place through the influence of Libra, the cardinal cross. This process of reorientation leads to a passage around the wheel in which steadily and persistently the inner subjective man comes into outer manifested expression, and the personality recedes into the background. Finally, there come 12 lives, wherein the final stage of renunciation is experienced and the disciple or initiate renounces all for the love of humanity and its service, and lays himself upon the altar of sacrifice. He achieves as a result the final liberation. Libra, wherein the point of balance is eventually reached between spiritual man and personal man, and the stage is laid for the final fivefold process, which is in reality the subjective correspondence to the outer externalization upon the path of outgoing, and which is carried forward upon the path of ingoing, or the path of return. Then takes place the reversal of the wheel, and the beginning of the new orientation and of discipleship in Scorpio, the directed, controlled life of the disciple in Sagittarius, initiation in Capricorn, followed by service in Aquarius, and the work of a world savior in Pisces, and final liberation. Learn first of all to control reactions to the planets as they rule and direct the personality affairs from their different stations in the 12 houses of the horoscope. A way in which this is done by consciously assuming the position of the spiritual observer and by cultivating the power to respond to the soul. Then, from the angle of that soul, the man must learn to control circumstance and the attendant reactions of the personality. Let us sound together our unified response in service of humanity. The souls of all are one, and we are one with them. We seek to love, not hate. We seek to serve and not exact due service. We seek to heal, not hurt. Let pain bring due reward of light and love. Let the soul control the outer form and life and all events, and bring to light the love that underlies the happenings of the time. Let vision come and insight. Let the future stand revealed. Let inner union demonstrate and outer cleavages be gone. Let love prevail. Let all people love.
We stand together now in the second decanate of Libra. What do we need to understand? The decanates can be dealt with in two ways according to the direction in which the man is traveling upon the wheel, and therefore entering the sign, so to speak, speaking in symbols. If he enters Libra on the common cross, he will come under the influence of Mercury, Saturn, and Jupiter. Those in our groups who are attempting to make that point of balance where they can make the decision and are on the common cross are in the second decanate under the influence of Saturn. When he reorients himself and mounts the fixed cross, he comes under the influence of Jupiter, Saturn, and Mercury. Therefore, for the initiate and disciple, culminating his career in any of the signs with a final dominant and struggle and fight. So we are, as those on the reversed wheel are making that turn under in the second decanate, under the influence of Saturn. And in part 3, we will look at the influence of Mercury, preparing us for the struggle and the fight in Scorpio. I would remark here that Alan Leo, this is DK saying, Alan Leo had a glimpse of the inner significance of the decanates. He touched the truth of the inner subjective reversal upon the wheel, which brings in other energies and influences. Mind and heart must be coordinated and brought into play when the great reversal takes place. Let's speculate regarding the decanate rulers that these are related to the paths. The probationary path to Jupiter, the path of discipleship to Saturn, and the path of initiation to the higher vibration of Mercury. All of these relating to those who are in esoteric studies and moving from the path of probation to discipleship, and eventually onto the path of initiation. Ellen, would you read these for us, the next sequence?
The third ray, the seventh ray, the fifth ray, the first ray. Planetary rulers, Venus, Uranus, and Saturn. Decanate rulers, Jupiter, Saturn, and Mercury. Libra demonstrates the perfect balance of spirit and matter, which first came together in Aries. This balance and this relation of the great opposites, spirit and matter, is symbolized for us in the personality situation of balancing the pairs of opposites on the astral plane and finding between them the narrow, razor-edged path which leads the man into the kingdom of the soul. Relating the paths and the great triangle, we invoke in every alignment, receiving energies from three great zodiacal beings. The highest, Shambhala. Libra admits the soul into the world center, which we call Shambhala, for it is the polar opposite of Aries, which is the place of beginnings. Hierarchy. Capricorn admits the soul into conscious participation in the life of that world center, which we call hierarchy. And humanity. Cancer admits the soul into the world center, which we call humanity. We cannot understate the importance of Saturn. Saturn ruling the second decanate of Libra. Saturn being the focal point for the transmission of cosmic manas to the entire seven schemes. Another type of energy reaches man from the Pleiades. The Sirian energy passes through the Saturnian scheme. Saturn is the lord of karma, the imposer of retribution, and the one who demands full payment of all debts, and who therefore condemns us to the struggle for existence, both from the form side and from the soul side. Saturn, karma, cannot follow man on to the cardinal cross, the 12 final tests. Saturn, usually associated with karma. Karma fulfills itself in relation to the form nature upon which it expends its energy, and that where there is a static condition and a quiescent attitude, the process moves but slowly. The life then within the form fails to experience the needed forceful awakening. Inevitably, then, there lies ahead a repetition of the process until the time comes when activity and response is evoked. This then leads to resistance to the apparent karmic necessity, and this brings about liberation. Only through resistance to evil, and in this world period, and in this Kali Yuga, as the Eastern teachers call it, it is an essential, basic attitude. Can karma be brought to an end? Saturn ruling in Libra. Saturn is the planet of discipleship and of opportunity. It is exceedingly active today, presenting to the world disciple those difficult situations and crises which will involve free choice, discriminative pioneering, wise response, and correct decision, thus bringing about the destruction of that which hinders without the relinquishing of any true values of which humanity may be aware. The individual disciple has always been faced with these conditioning and releasing circumstances. And today, humanity itself is in the same position. We stand at the gateway of the new world, of the new age, and its new civilizations, ideals, and culture. Saturn, having offered opportunity and proffered us a choice to bring about the needed changes and to destroy that which holds back the free expression of the soul, eventually stands aside in order to let his great brother, Mercury, spread the light of the soul, intuitive and illuminating, upon the situation, to interpret for us through our own illumined minds the significance of events, and to relate the old and the new, the past and the future, through the light of the present. Hence, the subjective usefulness of the present general trend towards meditation processes, which bring about the capacity to be impressed from on high, technically understood, and to be illumined by the light of the soul. Disciples upon the path of discipleship are strongly influenced by Mercury and Saturn, one bringing illumination and the other offering opportunity. At the various initiations, the influence of the planets affects the candidate in a totally different manner than earlier. Cyclically, the energies from the constellations pour through the planetary centers. At the first initiation, the disciple has to contend with the crystallizing and destroying forces of Vulcan and Pluto. The influence of Vulcan reaches to the very depths of his nature, whilst Pluto drags to the surface and destroys all that hinders in these lower regions. At the second initiation, the candidate comes under the influence of 3 planets, Neptune, Venus, and Jupiter. The 3 centers, solar plexus, heart, and throat, are actively involved. At the third initiation, the moon, veiling a hidden planet, and Mars bring about a fearful conflict. But at the end, man is released from personality control. Let us continue to contemplate in Libra. Choice, and choose the higher way. Balance for those on the mutable cross. Equilibrium that we can achieve as a serving group. The point, a point of tension, that point of focused, immovable will as a group. Living positive harmlessness. Eliminating hindrances. The need to dissipate and dispel glamours and illusions in group service. Standing in spiritual being and as a soul, holding the point of balance at the altitude and with the attitude of the observer. In the third decade of Libra, ruled by Mercury, we continue together, synthesizing as best we can as a group the teachings which we have been given to apply in active service to aid humanity in the new age. Confirming our intention and dedication to the one work by living selflessness, harmlessness, and ever expressing right speech. Let us together sound the great invocation as given in 1945. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide all little wills of men. The purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Om. 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 We continue our
Go ahead.
We continue our contemplative approach to the energies of Libra in the third decade, focusing on the interrelationship of the science of triangles and science of the rays, and the influences of Saturn, Uranus, and Mercury on Saturday, October 14 at 2 p.m. GMT.